Ivan Pavlenko, From Family to Family, Chapter 4, Part 1.4, Karpylivka, 8th grade school. Read by Natalia Buzova. There were many different stundas in the villages of the region. Among them, Baptists, evangelists, Pentecostals, and even Jehovah's Witnesses, who were banned by the state and operated underground. Sectarian houses of worship operated in Tsumань and Moshchanitsa, controlled by local authorities and state security agencies. Children were not allowed to be taken there, since the prayer ritual was dangerous for their health, since it brought a person to religious ecstasy, nervous excitement, and mental disorder. In Karpylivka, there was perhaps the largest number of Pentecostals, but they did not have their own house of worship, so they gathered secretly in one or another house, which was prohibited since it fell outside the control of the government. Pentecostals call themselves brothers and sisters, do not take up arms, and do not serve in the army. They deny the need for the church to act as a mediator between God and people. That is why they do not observe Christian rituals, do not recognize icons and the cross. What makes them special is that they believe in the possibility of the Holy Spirit ascending to any believer, and he acquires the gift of prophecy and begins to speak other languages. But the indwelling of the Holy Spirit is possible only for those who, through prayer, bring themselves closer to God, that is, drive themselves to madness and, like a madman, begin to say something. At their meetings, Pentecostals pray, weep, and shake convulsively. For an outsider, this spectacle is tragicomic and semi-wild. I visited it once under the following circumstances. One evening, I was called into the office. I arrived, and the secretary of the party organization, Katerina Savchenko, Brigadier Ivan Fedorchuk, and the KGB major were already sitting there. "Let's go to the sectarians," said the major. "They gather in private houses secretly, illegally, and attract students to the sect. As a representative of the school, you are needed as a witness. Let's go." It was dark outside, but the four men led us exactly to the indicated address. We stopped near the house. The windows were curtained, but individual voices could be heard. We went inside. There were a lot of people. They were also our students. The air was heavy and musty. They noticed us, but they didn't show it and continued their way. Some prayed, others cried, and still others stretched out their hands to the invisible God. The major walked forward and ordered to stop the disgrace. There was silence, broken only by occasional sobs. The major took the Bible from the presbyter, drew up a protocol, and then ordered them to disperse. People obediently left the room. A few days later, Presbyter Peter Dorosh was summoned to the Regional Executive Committee and fined for illegal activities. Fulfilling my party assignment, I often spoke to people with political information and lectures at a club, on a farm, or somewhere at a production facility. I prepared for them thoroughly and explained the international situation, as well as the policies of the party and the state, in an accessible, bright, convincing manner. So I noticed that more and more students were coming to my lectures, including collective farm leaders and teachers. When I spoke at production facilities, the sectarians were gathered, perhaps against their will, but they sat humbly and listened silently. I never touched on their religious beliefs, but only told them what certainly interested them. Indicative in this regard was my political information about Yuri Gagarin's flight into space. It was on April the 12th, 1961. I was going to school. I had someone calling from behind. I turned around and saw Grigory Linnik running and wanted something from me. He was still a young man and was not involved in sectarianism. For several years, he worked in the Donbas region and in character was in many ways similar to the Eastern Ukrainian people. He liked to drink and tell jokes. I stopped. He ran up, out of breath and excited, and said, "Comrade teacher, they are broadcasting on the radio that a man has flown to heaven. So I want to ask you, what should I do? To go to work or run into the snacks?" I immediately realized that he was deliberately dressing up as a naive simpleton, and I laughed. And then I advised him to go to people and tell everyone about Gagarin's feat. On the same day, I spoke in several places with information about the achievements of our country's science, which was the first in the world to launch an assault on space. I also explained what the solar system, stars, and planets were, but I didn't say a word about the religious concept of the divine creation of the universe, so as not to offend the feelings of the believers who were also listening to me.